right, kicking off the live broadcast and Real America's Voice at MTN and reaching a growing global audience. This is the Steve Gruber Show. It's a no panic zone, a place that triggers American patriotism and enthusiasm about the future. Thank you for being here today. Here are three big things you need to know this hour. Number one, President Trump has announced a meeting at 8 o'clock this morning to outline what he says will be irrefutable evidence of the success of our strike on Iran. Number two, U.S. Envoy Steve Witkoff says the Abraham Accords are about to have several more countries sign on to further the peace movement in the Middle East, including some big surprises. Wouldn't that be nice? And number three, almost 24 years ago, New York City lost almost 3,000 people when Muslim terrorists destroyed the Twin Towers in a brazen attack using jumbo jets. Radicalized by a religion that considers Americans and Christians especially as infidels, or simply put, their enemies. Today, a Muslim socialist, communist, really, has all but won the Democrat primary for mayor of New York City. And I wonder whether we'll watch New York City devolve into another London, or maybe we should just call the Big Apple the cooked apple of New London. Is this the result of failed experiments of open borders and diversity at any cost? Maybe. 33-year-old Zohran Mamdani, born in Uganda to Indian parents, is a self-described democratic socialist who only became a naturalized citizen 7 years ago. And now he's on the verge of running America's largest city with a very radical and, dare I say, un-American vision. His mother told the Hindustan Times that Mamdani doesn't even consider himself an American. She said, and I quote, "He is not an American at all. He was born in Uganda, raised between India and America. He's at home in many places. He thinks of himself as Ugandan and as an Indian." Really? Thanks, Mom. As many as 500,000 illegal aliens live in New York City. That's just the ones that people call undocumented. So it should come as no surprise that Mamdani resonates with people who also, by every definition, do not consider themselves American. He ran ads in a foreign language, promising free stuff, lots of it, to just about everybody to win this primary. Listen to this.
बात ये नहीं है कि मैं क्या बनूंगा, बात ये है कि मैं क्या करूंगा हमारे कम्युनिटीज के लिए और हर एक न्यूयॉर्कर के लिए। मैं हमारे शहर को अफोर्डेबल बनाऊंगा। न्यूयॉर्कर्स मुश्किल से अफोर्ड कर रहे हैं रोटी, कपड़ा और मकान। मैं ये सब बदलने के लिए लड़ रहा हूँ। रेंट फ्री बसेस, यूनिवर्सल चाइल्ड केयर और सस्ती ग्रोसरीज के जरिए। पर आपको एक सवाल पूछना चाहता हूँ, तुमने कभी किसी को वोट किया?
Anywhere you speak it, it doesn't matter. In any language, communism is dangerous. That's where we're at. A campaign targeting audiences that don't even speak English and who know almost nothing about America or American heritage or don't care. Let's look at the demographics, because despite the optics, it's actually the usual demographic that chose this man as the Democrat candidate. What do I mean by that? Well, despite Mamdani's promises of free stuff to low-income New Yorkers, they voted overwhelmingly against him. It's the middle and upper class who think that the government can magically solve everything. It's the white know-it-all liberals who did this, at least so far. And when it comes to racial demographics, black and Hispanic voters also voted against Mamdani, with white and Asian voters boosting the Muslim to a win. Additionally, the majority of college graduates voted for Zohran. Most without a degree voted for Andrew Cuomo, confirming what we already know. American universities have become Marxist indoctrination centers. Mamdani's promises are straight out of the Marxist playbook. He promises to make New York City a battleground to fight against Donald Trump and fight for open borders. Here's more.
And it's where the mayor will use their power to reject Donald Trump's fascism, to stop mass ICE agents from deporting our neighbors, and to govern our city as a model for the Democratic Party.
Yeah. Turn it into a socialist, communist hellhole. Those aren't the only promises he's made. He promises to make the city a communist utopia. When you hear more from this speech, Maybe you can understand why left-wing New Yorkers rallied behind this man. Maybe you can, but I'm still confused. Here, listen.
We have won because New Yorkers have stood up for a city they can afford. A city where they can do more than just struggle. One where those who toil in the night can enjoy the fruits of their labor in the day. Where hard work is repaid with a stable life. Where 8 hours on the factory floor or behind the wheel of a cab is enough to pay the mortgage. It is enough to keep the lights on. It is enough to send your kid to school. Where rent-stabilized apartments are actually stabilized. Where buses are fast and free. Where childcare doesn't cost more than CUNY. And where public safety keeps us truly safe.
So he's talking about taking police out of dangerous neighborhoods, replacing them with social workers, free buses, free childcare, government supermarkets too. You and I and most of America know that those are nothing more than empty promises because he plans on accomplishing those objectives with government handouts, which have never in the history of government worked. And here's what I just mentioned, the loony idea of government-owned grocery stores. You have to hear it to believe it. Here it is.
Grocery prices are out of control. The cost of eggs and milk has skyrocketed. Some stores are even using dynamic pricing, jacking up the cost over the course of a day depending on what they can get away with. It doesn't need to be this way. I'm Zahran Mamdani, and as mayor, I will create a network of city-owned grocery stores. It's like a public option for produce. We will redirect city funds from corporate supermarkets to city-owned grocery stores, whose mission is lower prices, not price gouging. These stores will operate without a profit motive or having to pay property taxes or rent, and will pass on those savings to you.
Here's a prediction for you. There will never be government-owned grocery stores in New York, and if they are, they will be short-lived in a failure. Your grocery store can run with the same efficiency as the DMV. I mean, come on, seriously? You want the government to run your grocery store? Here's the kicker. Mamdani claims to want to protect the underprivileged, but in low-income areas where he promises to set these stores up, the government stores will end up competing with and running out of business small independent bodegas, which make up 80% of retail food outlets in the city. These government stores aren't going to crush the local Kroger. They're going to squash family-owned businesses. And New Yorkers should know this, but these rich white college kids are too brainwashed for common sense. How do I know? Well, watch this.
I voted for Mamdani.
Okay, can you tell us why?
I'm just looking for someone new and not part of the established Democratic Party who also hasn't been accused of sexual assault.
I spoke to the other side a little bit, and they're concerned about like the government-run grocery stores and the free buses. What's your response to that?
I think government in the U.S. is great in the sense that there's always balance, right? Like, no one person is making all the decisions, and so I think there'll be balance within.
He describes himself as a Democrat socialist. Like, do you feel like socialism would work in New York City?
No, not necessarily.
Oh, it won't work, but we're going to try it anyway. I'll be back. All right, Anthony pointed it out pretty well as we were going into break there. The woman we heard from there, oh, is it going to work? No, it won't work. Yeah, I just want to vote for somebody who's trendy and give me free Lululemon and free kombucha at the government store. Yeah, okay. No, it won't work, but you're going to run your city further into the ground for someone new and exciting and trendy. Congratulations, idiot voters. Actually, this astonishing screenshot shows that New Yorkers began Googling socialism before more than ever. After the polls closed, they have no idea what they're even voting for. Neither does the genius Joy Reid, who's struggling to make her mark on CNN now after being drop-kicked from MSNBC for being an abject failure. She isn't used to getting fact-checked even mildly, and here she gets handed the receipts on why Mamdani is not good for New York City. She doesn't handle it particularly well. Listen.
What is your evidence that Mamdani would return New York City to the 1970s hellhole Times Square? What is your evidence of
It's
that?
very simple. So he wants to raise taxes on people who make the most money. What eventually is going to happen is you're going to lose that tax base. Once you lose that tax base, our bonds will get degraded. Now the city budget will not be substantial enough to subsidize not only the cops but the fire department, the sanitation department. Once you start losing Wall Street and people who pay $11,000, $12,000 a month to live on the Upper East Side, you're done.
Let me ask
and
you.
go back to the 70s when Gerald Ford said to New York, drop dead.
Okay.
There you have it. Not only are Mamdani's promises reckless, they're empty. She just got throttled there, by the way. You run the tax base out, which, by the way, Florida's going to have a lot more people moving in. Yeah, Governor DeSantis thanking the people of New York. Thank you. We just drove the West Palm real estate up again. Current Mayor Eric Adams, by the way, who is running. See, they've got this ranked choice voting system. Eric Adams could get reelected because of this disaster. He says that Mamdani wouldn't even have the power as mayor to accomplish most of what he's promising. He's lying, he says. Snake oil, he says. Listen.
He's a snake oil salesman. He will say and do anything to get elected. Think about this for a moment. He wants to raise 1%. He wants to raise tax on 1% of New Yorkers' high-income earners. As the mayor, you don't have the authority to do that. You know who has the authority to do that? An assemblyman, which he is. He wants to do free buses. He could have done it at assemblyman. He doesn't understand the power of government and how you must making sure you improve your economy, raise the standard of living, and this is what we've done in the city. And I'm looking forward to being on the campaign trail and showing New Yorkers we can't go backwards.
Yeah, snake oil salesman or not, if you thought New York City is bad now, it'll only get a lot worse under the leadership of a Muslim socialist anti-Semite, which he's clear about too. We don't have to look any further than London, which has been under the leadership of a Muslim for the last several years, also a man who's socialist. Here are the streets of London today. I don't think these college-age girls who voted for Mamdani would feel very safe trying to make their way through this kind of a crowd on their way to get that overpriced Starbucks. Not clear enough evidence for you? How about this radical from London? Watch, listen.
You're a liar. I wouldn't trust you and I hate you as well.
So the point is you won't have a conversation with me because I'm a Christian.
No, I won't believe anything you say because you're a liar. And you're a Christian as well. I hate you for the sake of Allah.
You hate me for the sake of Allah.
I hate you for the sake of Allah.
All right.
I hate you for the sake of Allah. Every Christian, I hate you all for the sake of Allah. Any Jew, any Christian, I hate you all for the sake of Allah.
He hates me for the sake of Allah.
You hate these bastards and the other bastards as well.
Would you kill me if you get a chance?
If we're in war, I would chop your head off.
Yeah, Allah guides you.
If we're fighting in war, am I supposed to let him kill me? I said if we are.
No, let's ask this again. Do you hate me?
Yes, I hate you for the sake of Allah.
Who taught you to hate me?
Islam did.
Wow. He hates all Jews. He hates all Christians. He would kill them if there was any sort of a war. What taught you to hate? Islam did. And you can try to explain away that this man's a radical or this or that or anything else. He's not alone. He was in a big crowd. Mamdani is radical enough to want to arrest the Prime Minister of Israel for war crimes. How do I know? He said so. Here it is.
Would a Mayor Mamdani welcome Benjamin Netanyahu into the city?
No. As mayor, New York City would arrest Benjamin Netanyahu. This is a city that our values are in line with international law. It's time that our actions are also.
Even though the U.S. is not a signatory to the ICC?
No, it's time that we actually step up and make clear what we are willing to do to showcase the leadership that is sorely missing in the federal administration.
If Benjamin Netanyahu visited the Big Apple, the mayor would have him arrested. Really. This is a man who has every intention of creating his own regime inside New York City. He has stated at every turn that he plans on defying the federal government every opportunity he has. Here are some of his other campaign promises. Abolish the New York Police Department. Abolish prisons. Abolish medical bills. Abolish private health insurance. Ban all guns. End cash bail. Decriminalize drug possession. End all cooperation with ICE. A recipe for disaster, and I know a lot of us might be tempted to just let it happen. Let these New York City liberals get what they want. Let them find out for themselves when you hand away every ounce of freedom for the illusion of free stuff. But here's the problem. Number one, these people don't learn. There's a reason LA, San Francisco, and Chicago are as terrible as they are, because liberals don't learn. They're too blinded by their hatred of the right. And second, New York City is an American city. It used to be great. We used to be able to take pride in it, and we could again one day. I want to, and I think we should. All of our largest cities need to reflect the values that made our country great. That's why I've spent the entirety of this segment calling out Mamdani for what he is, a danger to the largest city in our nation. We'll see just how rotten the Big Apple has become in November, when the mayoral election is finally held. But for the sake of New Yorkers and Americans everywhere, I hope this is as far as Mamdani gets. We need to put a stop to this now. I'll take Eric Adams over this guy 10 times to none. 10 times to none. All right, we'll see what happens. Appreciate you being here. Find out more by following me on X. We need more followers today. On Facebook. Come on, step up. Be part of this movement. Save America. Because remember, only you can save America. I can't do it by myself. Are you with me? Don't forget to watch live on YouTube, live on X, live all over this planet. It's the Steve Gruber Show. A lot to cover here today. Chuck Schumer was hospitalized yesterday, in case you missed it. Chuck Schumer hospitalized. Taken to the hospital for dehydration, we're told, out on an abundance of caution. He's 74, was at the Senate gym. Got lightheaded. Went to the hospital to be treated for dehydration. Now back at work at the Capitol. Yeah, Chuck Schumer. He's lightheaded, all right. I'll give him that. He's lightheaded, all right. He's just a freaking stooge. Let's see here. The DOJ suing Minnesota over in-state tuition for illegals. Your money, again, going to illegals ahead of your children, grandchildren, and the other people of this country. Senator Marino of Ohio backing the idea. Bernie Marino just elected there in Ohio. Backing the idea that Donald Trump could win the Nobel Peace Prize. Well, if the Abraham Accords are expanded, that would be a pretty obvious move. If Iran is disarmed and peace is spreading in the Middle East, and it happened under the tutelage of Donald Trump, he deserves the Nobel Peace Prize. He does. Here's a side note. Did you know 60 million Americans have parasites they don't know about? That's pretty scary. They secretly invade the body, wreaking havoc on your gut, energy level, even your brain, and the mainstream medical system. They don't want you thinking about it. Because, listen, they can keep treating you for things that don't fix it. They don't want you to know about the great cleanse that can change your life. The Wellness Company has a solution for you, ivermectin and mebendazole. FDA-approved parasite solutions now combined in one cleanse combo. Fill out a brief medical intake form. Get your 3-month supply. Lots of parasite cleanses are all over social media, but not the gold standard. Maha is officially here, and the Wellness Company is making hard-to-get medications accessible so you can live your best life. TWC.health/Gruber. TWC.health/Gruber. Use the promo code Gruber. You will save $60 and get free shipping. I just did it. Ivy and I both did it, all right? We're through it. Cleaned me out. Don't wait. Cleanse your body today with the gold standard from the Wellness Company. Save $60 free shipping. TWC.health/Gruber. I'll be right back. All right, don't go anywhere. You on today with the same topic here. What has happened to New York City? Or is it New London now? Is that what we should we just call it New London and just beat the rush? I mean, London has gone from being a whatever it was to something it never was. Mary Gruber is the author of Debunking FDR, the Man and the Myths, a resident fellow at the Hamilton Institute for the Study of Western Civilization, the founder of the Dissident Professor Education Project. She joins me now. Mary, thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
You know, I saw Liz Truss, I think it was, the former short-lived Prime Minister of the UK here recently saying, look, if we don't get our act together, we won't have Western civilization in 10 years. I'm paraphrasing a bit. You might have seen those comments. I look at what just happened in New York City. It's on suicide watch. Look, they just voted for Zohran Mamdani. This guy wants, let's see, free education for illegals, free daycare, government-run grocery stores. It's a recipe for absolute disaster. And he doesn't even consider himself an American, according to his own mother, who says he considers himself Ugandan. What do you make of it all, Mary?
It's frightening, but I attribute it to our educational system. I mean, how could New York voters vote for someone like that? I mean, when you look at the people who were supporting him, these Generation Z and millennials, the words that come out of their mouths, they have no idea of what it's like to have government-run grocery stores. You have bare shelves, you have starvation. And so they're voting in total ignorance. And, they also don't understand that government does not solve economic problems. They've been indoctrinated with this idea that the big government programs of the New Deal brought us out of the Great Depression, out of, FDR's New Deal. But actually it extended the Depression much longer than it went on in other countries. And so what I try to do in my book is to refute all these myths.
Yeah, it did extend the Great Depression because of failed government policies and government intervention. And so he wants to have price controls, he wants a $30 minimum wage, wants to not allow building owners to control the rent in their own buildings. I mean, this takes you back to the 1970s wage and price controls of Richard Nixon that were an abject failure by any metric, right? I mean, that's just the way that is. Here's good news, at least for one guy. One guy's pretty happy about that today. His name's Eric Adams. He's the current mayor, a guy who was the Democrat nominee previously, who's basically been run out of the party. But here's the fact. This guy gives Eric Adams new life because all the people that have big money in New York, they're not going with this clown, Zohran Mamdani, who, by the way, was not supported by the lower income people. He was supported by the white liberals, right? That's a fact. It wasn't the low income people. It's all the elites dumping money into this guy who does ads that aren't even in English. So this gives Eric Adams a chance to become mayor for a second term, doesn't it?
Yeah, I hope it does. I'm not a big fan of him, but he would certainly be a better alternative.
Yeah.
And, Mamdani wants to, eliminate the police. It would be a complete disaster. But when you're talking about, the white upper class voters, these are people with college degrees and advanced degrees. And so they've been educated in this into ignorance. They've lost their common sense. And the working class people, they can, they're used to dealing with a budget, even if it's on a personal level. They know that money doesn't grow on trees. And so they have more common sense and they can see through this. And hopefully they will prevail in the general election.
So what is the general election on this? Is it November, I assume? Right?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, I don't live in New York City, so I don't know the exact calendar for their elections. But look, this guy is everything that you could not, and because he's not a democratic socialist, he's a communist. Call him for what he is. He is an outright communist. He wants government control of everything. The wages, the food, the working conditions, free fast buses, free child care, free everything. And he thinks that money does grow on trees. And what is remarkable is that this exposes, as I said at the top of the show today, this exposes our higher education system for the indoctrination centers they are. Because anybody that's actually educated, who understands about the Bolshevik Revolution or the Great Leap Forward in China. Anybody that can study socialism and communism would understand this is the dumbest possible thing you could say after all the evidence of the 20th century and 100 million people killed by these policies. 100 million, Mary, died in the 20th century by most estimates, my estimates, which on this program are all that matter.
Yes.
Anyhow, right?
Well, that's what the Black Book of Communism says. I mean, that's the most accurate estimate we have. And, but these mush brains, as the late Rush Limbaugh used to call them, don't know this. They're not taught it. I taught college for 20 years, and I've had students in classes. I had a third of a class once who had never heard of the word communism. And I had to
excuse me? A college class. They'd never heard the word communism.
Correct.
Wow.
Yes.
I just sit back in my chair going, look, it's one thing because I sit here and say, how do they not teach about the Great Leap Forward? 50 million Chinese killed through starvation because they wanted to provide government food. 50 million people died from government food supplies with Chairman Mao. Maybe the worst criminal of the 20th century was Chairman Mao. They don't teach that. They don't teach about Pol Pot in Cambodia, another horrible criminal, or all the criminals in succession that ran the Soviet Union, one criminal after another, or the criminals that run Cuba. These are all criminals, Mary. These are not politicians. They're criminals because they're killers, every one of them. Where am I wrong?
You are not wrong. You're absolutely right. But it began with FDR, the valorization of Stalin and, our diplomatic recognition of the Soviet Union. And as I point out in my book, FDR was a fan of Stalin. He thought that there would be the four great powers that would rule the world after the war was over, with himself and Stalin taking the lead. And, eventually the two different forms of government would merge. We would become more socialist and the Soviet Union would become more democratic. That was his dream. But of course, he died on April 12, 1945. So he was fortunately never able to fulfill that dream of, sitting side by side and ruling the world with Joseph Stalin.
You know who was right? Let me tell you who was right. Churchill was right. George Patton was right. When Patton said we should run them all the way back to Moscow, Patton was right. Truman said no. Oh, and MacArthur was right. We should run them all the way back to Beijing during the Korean War. He was also turned down. Those two generals knew exactly what they were looking at. Long-time permanent threats to the United States. They were both right. The presidents, FDR and Truman, were both wrong. I'll just leave it there, Mary. Good conversation. You come back anytime. Anytime at all. I appreciate talking to you. Thank you very much. There you have it, folks. Mary Graber, author of the Debunking FDR, the Man and the Myths. Because FDR is not at all what some people would tell you. Not at all. Worst president ever? Possibly. Based on the damage he did. Possibly. I'll take a break and be right back. Welcome back to the program. I've got a headline here for you. A headline I want you to hear because I've had people say, does this really happen? Well, here's a headline from just the last few days. Man facing felony charges after trying to scam the deed of a home from a widow and 4 kids. Yeah, trying to steal the deed of a guy who had passed away. 47-year-old Armando Porto del Sol busted in Broward County, Florida for trying to steal the title of a home that had been purchased back in 2009, a house worth more than $1 million, all of that equity in there, and he was going to take it away from a widow and her 4 kids. So yes, my friends, it happens. Joining me now, Natalie Dominguez, title theft education specialist for Home Title Lock. Natalie, welcome back to the program.
Hi, Steve. Thanks so much for having me on.
You know, I'm reading the story going, well, this is what I've been hearing about. This is what we've been talking about. And here it is. A guy trying to steal a house from a widow and 4 kids. I mean, first of all, you have no morals. But secondly, these things can happen if you're not prepared, right?
I mean, if you own property, you're susceptible to this type of crime. It's a white-collar crime. It's under the real estate umbrella. It's been growing, exponentially especially since the start of COVID, with everything being so much more accessible on the internet. But one of the things I think is really important about this story that you're sharing with your audience is that the county clerk's office that took this fraudulent paperwork. Actually, let me go back a little bit. The way this works is it takes one document, a signature, a fake notary stamp, a little tiny fee, you file it with the county, and suddenly your house is in someone else's name. And there's really no safety net for the homeowner. There are no checks and balances happening. They're not checking to make sure the ID is, I mean, some states might, but most of the time, they're not making sure the ID is there. There's no authentication process for the notary stamps that are happening. So in this case, the only reason that this was found out was because the paperwork had gotten to the Broward County Property Appraiser's office. And when they were notified of the ownership change, they were like, oh, this kind of looks a little weird because the owner had passed away 2 months prior to this being filed. That would look a little weird to me. Yeah.
So basically they got lucky.
Hands multiple times. Yeah, they got lucky. And
the
this had
family,
changed
that is.
multiple times. The family, yes.
Yeah, they got lucky here. You're right, because according to authorities, the deed was transferring the property to Del Sol. When police notified the Stark family, they said, we don't know who that guy is. Which is what Home Title Lock does. They notify people, say, wait a second, what's going on here? By the way, this guy's been charged with several felonies, including grand theft, fraudulent use of personal identification, criminal use of deceased personal identification. So look, it's an estate. Easier probably to steal an estate. It's an elderly person who, maybe doesn't have their full wits about them. I mean, there are certain targets that scammers since the beginning of time have targeted. That hasn't changed, has it?
No, absolutely. I mean, the elderly are always going to be a prime target because unfortunately, a lot of the times they don't have people looking out for them. But then also in this case, we have Matt Cox, who I believe has been on your show, who's a former criminal, and thankfully he's rehabilitated now and no longer doing this. But he said that's one thing that he would do. Some scammers, they'll look through obituaries, look at people that have recently passed away, and then they go and look at their property. And that's because one, the family is generally so caught up in everything dealing with the aftermath of the death. They're not sitting there spending the extra time going, let me make sure a scammer is not coming in and trying to steal my house on paper. So that's, the big thing here is that this was found out months after it had already happened.
Well, and Matt, speaking of Matt, and he spent years in prison pulling these same kind of scams. He said this kind of house described in this article is exactly what he would have looked for. Worth about $1 million. It's been mortgage payments for about 15 years, which means you got all that equity built up. You've got a nice property in a nice neighborhood. He goes, that's what I would look for. He didn't look for the $20 million property. He didn't look for the bottom of the barrel either. Right in the middle there. That's where you take a big chunk out of the apple. Right there.
Average Joe.
Yep.
Not everyone's going after Graceland. Not everyone's going after Petco Park. The main person that you're looking for is just the average person that has a house that's been there for a little bit.
That's right. And you think, I mean, we've all got our smartphones and our computers and the whole world's interconnected, and it's great until it's not, because all of this information about you and about me, it's all floating around. And unless you buy a house in cash, and I don't know who does that these days, the house has to be listed. your name and address have to be publicly available records. That's another problem,
No,
isn't
I
it?
mean, it doesn't matter how it's purchased. The bottom line is the property that you own is technically a parcel of the government, right? So because of the Public Records Act, your information is required to be published online. So all those information scrubbers that people buy because there was a data leak, they don't want their name and phone number on the web, that doesn't matter because legally the law is that this information needs to be disclosed. So your address, the parcel number, any of your public information for who the owner is, that's all out there. It's out there, and
I don't see
you
that
can't take it off
changing
the web.
anytime soon. So I think that your name's going to be out there 5 years from now, 10 years from now. The question is,
It's
was
been
the last
about
time you
50
saw
years
your
since the
title?
law
Yeah.
passed, so
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, it's
I
been a
don't
long
think
time.
it's changing anytime soon.
You know, people came on this program and said, Steve, when is the last time you saw the title of your house? I'm like, I don't know that I've ever seen it. Maybe I have. The point is, that's what they're counting on. They want you to be completely in the dark, have no idea, not pay, just busy. I mean, we're all busy, just not paying attention. That's all it takes for this to happen. So I have good news. I've hooked up with your team at Home Title Lock. If you go to HomeTitleLock.com, you'll get a free title check. It's worth $250. Click on the link in the description. That's HomeTitleLock.com. Promo code is Gruber. You'll get protection and peace of mind. And never more important than it is today, right, Natalie?
Nope, never more important. The great thing about the title check is that you're going to be able to make sure today that your home title is still in your name. And then if you see any discrepancies, anything that you're not aware of, you get to call our team, and our team gets to give you all the help that you need, all the advice that you need. We have a team of wonderful experts and a network of legal experts around the United States, because every state's a little different.
Right, state laws, local laws, municipalities, all different. They're on top of it. HomeTitleLock.com. Use the promo code Gruber. You'll save $250. You'll get protection, peace of mind you deserve to get started. It's a heck of a deal. Natalie, thank you for being here.
Thanks, no problem. Thanks for having me, Steve.
Greatly appreciate it, yeah. Can you imagine trying to take advantage of a widow and 4 kids? It'd be crazy. I'll take a break and be right back on The Steve Gruber Show. All right, back to it now. By the way, for those of you watching the last segment, that big smile popping in at the end, that was Sarah, our producer here. Sister Sarah popped in a cameo appearance here on the program, right? Anthony pointed that out to me. He's like, what happened right there? Oh, Sarah jumping in. All right, fine. By the way, back to the comment I made about George Patton, saying we should run them all the way to Moscow. Is what he said. He said we should run the Russians all the way back to Moscow. And, of course, that didn't happen. And then at some point he was relieved of command after a heated exchange with Eisenhower. And then there was this accident in a car, very suspect, shall we say. That happened in December, and he was taken to the hospital, and he was recovering. And then he died suddenly, unexpectedly in the hospital after his wife left the room for just a moment. Interesting, right? Killing Patton. Great book by, the whole Killing series. The whole Killing series. Killing Patton is one of those books that you should really just read. Killing Lincoln, Killing Patton, Killing Jesus. Bill O'Reilly, great book with Martin Dugard. I recommend them highly. Great books. I also recommend highly you learn everything you can about history from our friends at Hillsdale College. It's free. GruberforHillsdale.com. You can learn about Patton and World War II and this country. Great American stories right now. The story of America is what's up right now. 40 free series at GruberforHillsdale.com. You'll be glad you did this. I keep telling you about this because I want you to be educated. Don't forget to stay with us all day. YouTube, X, Facebook, live across the planet. It's the Steve Gruber Show. All right, coming to you live from Studio G in the heart of America and fighting for you from this foxhole of freedom we've built right here. We're going into another brand new hour of the Steve Gruber Show. Warning, this is a trigger warning now. The show often results in an extended period of American pride, optimism, and enthusiasm for this country's future. Live in all 50 states and around the world. We're going to do it. It's a dirty job, but it's got to get done, and I'm the guy. Here are three big things you need to know this hour. Number one, Chuck Schumer hospitalized after he became visibly ill. They tell us it was dehydration. We'll keep an eye on it, see if that's true. Number two, President Trump has returned from a very successful and positive NATO summit in the Netherlands, where his demands for 5% of defense spending was met by our allies. More good news. And number three, here's the most unsettling question you're going to hear today. Totally different topic this hour. Totally different. The most unsettling question you're going to hear today from anyone. And I want you to think about it. I do. How many child sex slaves were created by Joe Biden's open border policies? That's the question. How many sex slaves today are suffering at this moment as we talk directly because of Joe Biden's open border policies, and a policy defended by all Democrats almost universally? Democrats who said it was xenophobia if you didn't open the door and leave it open. Oh, and we've got to have immigration reform and all of this nonsense. The border has been closed and sealed in a historic fashion since Donald Trump became president. Not a single illegal was released into this country in May. Not one by this country. May of 2024 was something like 62,000 released. We know there are some 300,000 kids that are flat out missing today. That's probably a conservative number, 300,000 kids. And that means anybody 18 or under. Missing from the Biden years. Where do you think they went? Where do you think they went? Well, shocking testimony about the damage of Joe Biden's open border policies that I want to share with you today. And the thousands of children that became sex slaves as a result. Listen to this.
I state without reservation that the United States federal government is the world's largest child sex trafficking organization in modern history. The probability that thousands of these UACs are being raped at this very moment is 100%. Chairman Higgins, Ranking Member Correa, Chairman Bishop, Ranking Member Ivey, and the members of the subcommittee, I appreciate the opportunity to speak about the evil of child trafficking caused by the open border policies under President Joe Biden and his administration. I served in the United States Border Patrol for 24 years until I retired as a Deputy Patrol Agent in charge in San Diego sector. I worked under 5 presidential administrations, and only one president secured the border, President Donald Trump. Border Patrol agents went from working and being supported by the greatest border president in American history to the worst, President Joe Biden.
To the worst. President Joe Biden, the worst. How many children being sex trafficked, being abused at this moment because of Joe Biden and the Democrats and the open borders and their regurgitation of lies every single day? You should be outraged. You should be outraged. And it gets far worse. Because, as I pointed out, it was all intentional, all of it. Listen.
My last year in the Border Patrol was Joe Biden's first year in office. On his first day in office, I watched in disbelief as 94 executive orders cascaded down from Washington, D.C., obliterating every immigration policy that had been provided the most secure border in America's history. Border Patrol agents were forced to carry out unconstitutional orders that violated every law in the Immigration Nationality Act. President Biden, through Department of Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas, created policy out of thin air, ignored federal immigration law, and facilitated the largest mass invasion into America that the world has ever seen. The United States of America will have spent hundreds of billions of dollars in 4 years to fund the needs of over 50 million illegal aliens that populate our nation. Between 1 in 6 and 1 in 7 residents in America is an illegal alien. America has suffered the greatest demographic shift in modern history. After serving in the United States Border Patrol for 24 years, spending a year researching and writing a best-selling book entitled Invaded, The Intentional Destruction of the American Immigration System, and filming 2 documentaries, I state with complete certainty that Biden, Harris, and Mayorkas intentionally, strategically, and purposely weaponized illegal immigration and used it as a tool to fundamentally transform America.
Sobering, isn't it? Shocking. I watched this video yesterday and I just said, I've got to share this with the folks. Had to share it with you, a professional on the border who sees exactly what was happening then and what is happening now. The greatest evil of all the things Joe Biden did, and there was plenty. This is probably it. I got one more clip for you. Listen.
Inside this invasion, the unspoken evil of child trafficking, and more specifically, child sex trafficking, has flourished. At the end of this current administration, the number of children trafficked will have grown to over 550,000 unaccompanied alien children known as UACs. This horrific number of children will have been arrested, released into America, and then lost. To put this into context, during President Trump's last year in office, Customs and Border Protection arrested 30,557 UACs who were accounted for and not lost. Conversely, in the first year of Biden's presidency, CBP arrested 147,975 UACs, most of which are unaccompanied for and lost. In 2023, Congressional Hearings Health and Human Services Javier Becerra and Director of Office of Refugee Resettlement Robin Marcos forced to admit that their agency had no contact with over 85,000 UACs. They were lost. What did DHS, HHS, and ORR do to correct this humanitarian disaster? Nothing. In fact, all 3 agencies created further policies and procedures to increase the efficiency of moving UACs from the border to the interior of the United States to unknown and unvetted sponsors.
Yeah. You sit here and you have to ask yourself, how many? How many children turned into sex slaves that are stuck there today? Lives ruined. Remember that. Remember that forever, because those kids will. You should as well. Now, on a brighter side, if you want to lose some weight, 20 to 50 pounds in about 40 days, My Pure Health Solutions, they can get it done. They uncover the real reasons your body is holding on to the fat, like hormones, metabolism, inflammation, making it impossible to reach your weight loss goals. No exercise needed, and you'll get one-on-one calls with health coaches to keep you on track. Get summer ready from anywhere in America, right from your home. Listeners, my listeners, get $200 off the plan right now. Visit GruberHealth.com today. Take the first step toward a healthier you, a slimmer you, a better you. GruberHealth.com, real results, real food, real simple. You can really do this. I did, as you can see there, GruberHealth.com. You get to see some great pictures of my transformation. GruberHealth.com. Not permanent injections for the rest of your life, not heavy drugs, no. Getting on board with what your body's like. A custom plan just for you, GruberHealth.com. Lose weight right now and feel better about yourself. I'll take a break and be right back. It is The Steve Gruber Show. I've been watching clips of this in the last couple of days. Bernie Sanders went on the Joe Rogan podcast to talk about climate change. Man, did he get destroyed. I don't know. I don't know the answer. I don't know the answer to this. I don't know the answer to that. I'm not an expert. Then why are you trying to change the world when you can't answer simple questions if you're not an expert? Why are you out there bumping your gums, Bernie, telling us we need to, do this and do that and go EV and get rid of, coal-fired power plants and sit in the dark and all this other nonsense? Maybe you should get some facts that support your position. Maybe that'd be a nice way to go. Mark Morano is the executive editor of ClimateDepot.com. He joins me now. Mark, good morning. Welcome to the program. Glad you're here.
Good morning, Steve. Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
I just saw a compilation. I'd play it for you, but I think I just did it pretty well. I don't know. Don't have the answer. Not an expert. There it was over and over and over. Good God, Bernie doesn't know anything about this stuff, does he?
No, he was ill prepared. And I guess this is where we're watching in real time a major shift in populism in this movement, both left and right. Now, there's a lot of what Bernie Sanders goes on and he talks about, BlackRock and other stuff. There's some stuff conservatives could maybe agree with, but here's where he is completely, and a lot of other issues too. When it comes to climate, they don't realize that this is now no longer even popular among a lot of the left-wing base. Sure, you still have your AOCs but it's a dwindling base of people, including Bernie, including some of these young activists. But what they don't realize is people's eyes have been opened since COVID lockdowns. And when I say people, I mean Naomi Wolf, Jimmy Dore, RFK Jr. RFK Jr. used to call for jailing skeptics. And he was actually out there after COVID, and he said, I won't talk about climate change anymore because it's been hijacked by the World Economic Forum and the UN for totalitarian.
That's right. In fact, I don't know if it was hijacked by them. Mark, it might have been invented by them.
Yes,
and then funded by the Russians and communist China. They're the ones that pay the bill for all this indoctrination. Look, we call it the war on energy, the war on this war. It's the war on thinking. That's what we've got here. It's the war on thinking because the science is settled. And if you disagree with the science, there's something wrong with you. No. I'm done with that. That whole, you don't know the science. Neither do you, Bernie. And yet he'll guarantee you, Mark, he'll go out at his next little rally where 100 people show up and preach about climate change again, even though he just got dismembered by Joe Rogan. Go ahead.
They keep going to the well. All right, here's what happened on Joe Rogan, specifically and scientifically. He was shown this shock chart, and I still can't believe Jeff Bezos' Washington Post allowed this by. But the headline in the Washington Post, this is from fall of last year, 2024, scientists have captured the Earth's climate over the last 485 million years. 485 million years. Here's the surprising place we stand now. And they presented a graph of global cooling. They showed that in the last half a billion years, that the Earth is now in its coolest part that we've ever been in. Now, this follows up on a National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration data too during the Biden administration, hardly a group of climate deniers, showing the exact same thing. This follows what I've written about in my books, what skeptical scientists have been talking about for decades, that we are currently, geologically speaking, in one of the coldest periods of Earth's history, its entire history. In other words, 90% of Earth's history has been warmer than today with higher CO2 levels. That couldn't support ice at either pole. Today we have ice at both poles. We are currently in the cycle of our Earth in the coldest 10% period. This people cannot wrap their heads around. We're in the lowest carbon dioxide.
I can
level.
wrap my head around it. Let me be real clear about this, Mark. You know what happens when it's warm and it's wet? Things grow. Things like corn and rice and wheat, which feeds lots of animals too. It creates a food supply. That's what it creates, a food supply, Mark. Warm and wet creates food. And so look, 11,700 years ago, roughly, where I'm sitting, there was a half mile of ice right here. There was an ice sheet right here in Michigan, where I'm sitting not too far from Detroit this morning. And the end of the last ice age began to close in. And we got this thing called the Great Lakes out of it. What a horrible thing. I'm a true believer in climate change because I love the Great Lakes, Mark. I'll give you that.
Yes, and you're exactly right. That was the face of the glacier probably went down as low as the southern Pennsylvania at that time. And people say, well, sea level's rising. Sea level's been rising for the last 10,000 plus years since the end of the Little Ice Age. On every metric, Steve, this is a con. Bernie is literally talking old talking points that I don't even think his base is responding to anymore. Hurricanes, floods, tornadoes, wildfires, droughts, heat waves, either no
Blah,
trend,
blah, blah.
declining trends. Even Biden's EPA showed the 1930s heat waves as 8 to 10 times hotter than anything we're experiencing today. But the media will say, we had a record temperature today. What they do, Steve, it's like a casino. You walk into a casino, you see all these slot machine winners with the big cardboard checks. They won $500,000, they won $2 million, and you get the idea everyone's a winner. Well, what they've done with the climate is they want you to think every weather event is unprecedented. No, it's not. In fact, weather extremes are declining.
That's right. Less tornadoes now. The biggest season for tornadoes in America, the 1970s, mid-70s. For hurricanes was the mid-1950s. Back in the 1950s, we also had one day in Hillsdale County, south here, 2 F5s back-to-back the same day on the same path. If that happened today in America, my God, the climate change Nazis would be out there running around screaming with their heads on fire. Oh, by the way, we haven't had an F5 in Michigan since 1973, just for the record. I'll give you the last word real quick.
Well, I got to go to Greenland in 2007 with Bernie Sanders. And we went on I was working in the Senate. I stood in for Senator James Inhofe. And I got to argue with Bernie, but it turns out Greenland was actually as warmer in the 1930s and 40s. The whole trip was a scientific propaganda. Everything they tried to portray was inaccurate. And by the way, they killed a polar bear on that trip when I was there in July 2007. Because
nice,
polar bears are dangerous predators that kill people. The Greenland government had no problem killing it. Well, the Democrats there, Barbara Boxer, these are the most beautiful, majestic animals. Yeah, is that why they just slaughtered one in the town? Because they were potential to harm humans.
Educate yourself at climatedepot.com. Be armed with facts, not fallacy. climatedepot.com. You'll have this guy, Mark Morano, to thank. Mark, thank you for being here as always, my friend.
Thank you, Steve. Appreciate it.
There you have it. climatedepot.com. Find out more. Be educated. I'll be back. By the way, I'm going to get you that soundbite. Before we close business today, I'm going to get you this because I want you to have it. I want you to hear Bernie Sanders get drop kicked on the football field by Joe Rogan. It's quite delicious, actually. It is quite delicious. Anyhow, he just gets destroyed. It's just something you can't even imagine how bad it is, right? Just how bad it is. Anyhow, we'll get that played for you here shortly because it's worth it. And I like to entertain you and educate you all at the same time. By the way, Daddy's home. Can you believe Mark Rutte, the executive director of NATO or whatever his title is, I think it's whatever it is, called Trump daddy? My God, I thought Marco Rubio was gonna lose it when a Sky News reporter asked about Donald Trump being called daddy. That's right, Daddy's home. Sometimes you have to talk to the children that way. Daddy's home, that's right. By the way, the streets were lined. The streets were lined with cheering people as Donald Trump drove by, right? As Donald Trump drove by Not here, but there. They were cheering him in the Netherlands. He's not the United States president. He's the world president at this point. If you don't believe it, if you're on the wrong side of that, well, good luck to you. And good luck to New York City, wherever the hell they're going. This part of the program brought to you by my friends at Wolverine Water, Michigan's premier water treatment company. You want the best water? You want to get rid of that dinginess in your clothes and the brown stains and the nonsense, or maybe you got a smell to your water? Well, Wolverine Water can solve all of those problems for you. You want more suds in the dishwasher, in the shower? Wolverine Water can do that for you. Pure water, clean air. WolverineWaterSystems.com. Tell my good friend Paul Mahaney I sent you on over. WolverineWaterSystems.com. They are the best. American-made products, American-made people, America through and through. God bless America. Go to WolverineWaterSystems.com. I'll be right back.
Today,
All right, well, the price of gasoline has moved some, but not a lot. It shouldn't really move much at all for us. Oil prices now, the oil prices came down, what, 10%, 12%? After the successful hit on Iran's nuclear facilities. Gasoline up just slightly. I'll just take a quick look here. Gas price actually down today, $3.22 a gallon today. Yesterday, $3.22. A week ago, $3.20, almost $3.21. So it's a penny higher than it was. A month ago, it's 4 cents higher than it was a month ago. And it's 25 cents cheaper than it was, 27 cents cheaper than it was a year ago. John Tamny is the editor of Real Clear Markets. He's here to help me sort it out. No real impact on energy prices. That's the fact, John. I'm looking at the numbers right here in front of me. What do you say? Welcome to the program.
Hey, thanks for having me on. And what I say is it's what's always been true. The Middle East as a driver of the oil price, even including OPEC, is vastly overstated. We're talking about how gasoline is $3.22 a gallon right now. Let's go back in time to the 80s and 90s. You could routinely buy a gallon of gas for under $1. Oil price per barrel was low as $7 in the 1980s, as low as 10 as late as 1998. Was OPEC, was Iran, was the Middle East, were they feeling generous at the time? No. In the 80s and 90s, we had a strong dollar. We've got a much weaker one today. But in the past week, we haven't seen the dollar decline, and so oil prices didn't spike in the way they might.
So here we are, and adjusted for inflation, fuel's cheap, right? I mean, you can talk about the 80s and 90s, but gas $1 a gallon, gas $3 a gallon. Adjusted for inflation, gas doesn't cost much at $3 a gallon. If it's $2.50 a gallon, it's even better. And America runs on vast quantities of cheap energy. True?
If you're going to adjust it for inflation, but I see inflation as a devaluation of the dollar. And so let's look at something like the price of gold. When the 21st century began, a dollar bought 1/260th of an ounce of gold. Today it buys 1/3300th. And so what I would prefer to say is just think how cheap gasoline would be if we had protected the dollar all of the 21st century. We'd be paying exponentially lower prices for gas, which is what we should be. I mean, if you look at the history of the oil price, Google an oil price chart from the 1930s until the 1970s, and you'd see a pretty flat number, just roughly $2 a barrel for decades and decades. That's what happens when you have a stable currency.
So it's a currency issue, and I don't dispute that. In fact, maybe that's what with the gold has leveled off at about $3,700 an ounce last time I looked. It's been there for a bit, but it goes up in these little surges. It'll go up $300 an ounce. It'll go up $200, and then it stays there. It doesn't seem to retreat, which to me is reflective of a weak dollar. Am I wrong about that? I mean, I'm not an expert like you are, but I see a weakness in the dollar, and I see during the Biden administration and even now all this money being flooded in. Right, especially over the last 4 years, not so much this year, but good grief. I mean, that just destroys my savings, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong about it. Let's never forget the gold price doesn't move. That's why historically currencies were measured in terms of gold. Gold is the constant. When you see the price of gold go up, that's a sign of a weaker dollar. When you see the price of gold go down, it's a sign of a stronger dollar. When Ronald Reagan was running for president in 1980, gold hit an all-time high of 875. He was running on a stronger dollar, and so as his polling chances grew, the price of gold fell throughout 1980 as an expectation of his victory. And so Donald Trump, look, love him or hate him, he believes a weak dollar drives economic growth. It doesn't. And so you've seen the dollar decline substantially under him. Oil would be much cheaper if he pursued a Ronald Reagan, let's throw in Bill Clinton policy favoring a strong dollar.
So how would you get there? What would you change policy-wise to move us in that direction?
To me, it's very simple. FDR, how did he devalue the dollar? He just said the dollar's not worth 1/20th of an ounce of gold anymore. It's worth 1/35th. So if you wanted to reverse it, you'd say, we think the strong dollar, stable dollar is very important. The U.S. Treasury could, between breakfast and lunch, say we're going to target a specific dollar price in terms of gold, and that will be our target. Markets would do your adjustment for you at that point. You wouldn't need to do anything. This is not about money supply.
So game that out for me. Game that out for me and the folks listening. I want to know what would happen there, John. All right, so they say we want a target of $1,000 an ounce for gold, right? Making it a strong dollar, whatever, pick your number. What would that do to inflation? What would that do to Wall Street? What would that do to a mortgage rate? What would that do to everything?
It would be, once again, it would just make inflation no longer an issue. Inflation is a devaluation of the currency. So if you make a stable dollar your policy, you no longer have inflation. See, all this time we keep mistaking higher prices for inflation, lower prices for deflation. In a market economy, the direction of prices is always lower because we get better and better at producing more and more of a market good at lower and lower prices. And so prices move around for all sorts of reasons. But if you make the dollar as good as gold or whatever commodity you want to stabilize it in, you get rid of the quote inflation problem. And so presidents can do that. Presidents get the dollar they want. Never forget President Nixon. The dollar is 1/35 of an ounce of gold. A lot of economists who gave him bad advice said, oh, you need to sever that link. That was the inflation. Severing the link was President Nixon's way of saying, I want a weaker dollar. Markets gave it to him. And so it's no surprise that oil prices, meat prices, soybean, wheat, everything spiked in the 1970s. They weren't more expensive. Just the dollar in which they were measured had become a lot cheaper, had been shrunken. And so you reverse it by having a policy of dollar price stability, something that no president has really talked about since Ronald Reagan. Bill Clinton's Treasury did a good job there. Ever since then, Presidents Bush, Obama, Biden, not as bad as the others, certainly Trump, they've all pursued a weak dollar.
What do you think about the dollar as the world's reserve currency? Is it in jeopardy?
Not now. It's very apparent that the dollar, if you went to Pyongyang, if you wanted to buy stuff in North Korea, you better have a dollar. If you go to Iran right now, you better have dollars. If you go to Venezuela, you better have dollars. Lebanon, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, wherever you go, the dollar is the world's currency.
So what about this BRICS summit coming up? I think it's July the 6th, I keep hearing about, where these countries are getting together to try to undermine the dollar, try to put the Chinese currency in, the yuan.
Good luck with that. Look, governments can't force producers to use a currency they don't want to use. Fair. The dollar is still the current currency of choice in China. For Chinese companies trying to raise money, they're raising dollars. This is true in Russia too. You can't force it because what do you do when you take a dollar in return for your work? You're trying to get something of equal value. You're paid in dollars, and then you want to get goods and services of equal value in dollars. And so producers decide which currencies circulate, and that's why the dollar circulates globally. It's the currency of choice for business people around the world. I'm merely saying it could be much better, precisely because the dollar is the world's currency. Think of what we could do for the U.S., but also the world, if the dollar had stability.
And
you
was
wouldn't,
stronger.
as you say, have the value of your work taken from you.
Yeah. Professor, that's what I'm going to call you from now on. Professor John Tamny, editor, Real Clear Markets.
Called worse.
No, I think you should. I think people are financially illiterate, and we should educate them whenever possible, John. And I appreciate your work here today. Thank you.
Thanks for having me on.
Really appreciate it. I'll have him back anytime. Going to continue the conversation about where we are in this country. We just talked about the dollar being weak, and that Donald Trump likes that. Of course, John Tamny didn't like that. He likes a stronger dollar, lower gold prices, lower oil prices. He said that's how you build wealth. Meanwhile, small business, where is it in the big, beautiful bill? The big, beautiful bill sitting in the Senate side of Congress, has for a while. The parliamentarian taking out big chunks of it, though, saying, this doesn't fit, this doesn't fit, this doesn't fit. We'll see if that stands, or if she is challenged by John Thune, the Senate Majority Leader from South Dakota. Bruce Torres is here, Director of Communications for the American Small Business League and the Don't Cheat Woman Project. Yeah. Bruce, how are you today?
I'm great, Steve. How are you?
I'm good. What is the Don't Cheat Woman Project?
That is our effort to point out that women own 42% of all businesses in the country, Steve. They're obviously half the population, and yet the stipulation is they should get only 5% of federal contracts. That is just so unfair on the face of it that we want to inspire candidates running next year, both in the House and the Senate, to go to our site, don'tcheatwomen.com, and see the ramifications of it. It's real basic.
Well, hold on, Bruce. When you say
it's
stipulated,
as obvious as it sounds.
Yeah, you say it's stipulated that they get 5% of the federal contract. Stipulated by whom?
Well, by the law. The 1953 Small Business Act created the Small Business Administration. Part of it was the provision that a fair portion of all federal contracts should go to small businesses. Over the decades, that's become 23%. Of that 23%, 5% are supposed to go to women-owned businesses. We think that the whole thing should be raised to 30%, and it should be 15% for those owned by men, 15% for businesses owned by women.
But wouldn't you get there by default? Why wouldn't we just support businesses that are good businesses? Why would we put this stipulation on there at all?
Because of the power of big businesses to get almost 97% of all contracts. They would get
that part
100%.
I agree with. If you want to help small business, I get that. But why stipulate beyond that for men or women or race or creed or color? Why would you do any of that? Why wouldn't we just let those businesses that are small businesses survive on their own and compete on their own?
There needs to be a blend, in our opinion, and also from many others who just look at just to circle back to the facts at the top, Steve. It's just that women own 42% of all businesses. By what measure is it fair to say that they should only get 5% if we're going to stipulate that 23% of the contract should go to small businesses? We just want to see a more fair, just allocation there, and have the conversation about, okay, but what about merit? What about earning it? A great point that you're making. That has to be discussed and resolved at a round table or whatever it takes.
Well, my point is this. Why would you give it? Look, I can see that you'd want to give more small business. I don't know what your definition is, 500 employees or less, which is a terrible definition, but that's what most people use. I think that 500 people is a big business in my world. Something less than 50 employees might be a good target, or maybe you could tier it. 5% to those with less than 50, 5% with those less than 100, 5, whatever. But basing it on race or gender, I'm sorry, I'm jammed there, Bruce. I can't get past it. I'm not buying it. I think that businesses should survive on their merit.
And that's a great point, and that's a huge part of the equation. We just bring in the plain justice and fairness of it, that we don't see that automatically. And it's not even automatically. If there has to be a conversation, discussing and debating, and doing a better job of coming to a figure for women that approaches just their size, their demographics, and the amount of businesses that they own. It's a conversation that we want to inspire all candidates to have as they run for office next year.
Yeah, I want meritocracy in America. That's what I want. I don't want artificial directives. I want meritocracy. I want the best, whatever it is. Man, woman, I don't care. I want the best to rise to the top. And is there a reason that only 42% of the businesses are owned by women? Are women less likely to start their own business? I'm guessing that could be a fact. What do you say?
That certainly could be, because we need freedom and meritocracy to guide and inform these kind of policies and the results. And we just have seen the efficacy and the intelligence of having a conversation that just examines, okay, how is this happening? And it's the same logic that really fueled the civil rights movement 60, 70 years ago, of the minority races that were blocked out of opportunity, even being able to be served in places of business, that needed the intervention of some laws and some rules and regs that open up opportunities for human beings who are blocked out simply because of their race. And we want to look at how federal contracts are predominantly going to companies owned by men, and is it because of the gender? Let's have a robust conversation about it. In my estimation, in our estimation of a full and fair conversation, it would not give women 5% of the federal contracts, given that they're half the population and own 42% of all businesses.
Yeah, well, women get raises at a lower rate than men, too. Why? They don't ask. It's been borne out in study after study. They don't ask. They're not as aggressive as men oftentimes, Bruce. But I don't agree. I don't disagree with you. But I like meritocracy. You come back anytime. We'll talk more about this. Bruce, Director of Communications for the American Small Business League. Sir, thank you as always.
Thank you, Steve.
Really appreciate it. We'll take a break and be right back with sports. All right, time to check it out sports with that good friend of mine, Brock Palmbush.
With a look at sports, I'm Brock Palmbush. The first round of the NBA draft was last night at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn, New York. With the first pick, as expected, the Dallas Mavericks selected Duke forward Cooper Flagg. With the second pick, the San Antonio Spurs picked Rutgers forward Dylan Harper. The second and final round of the NBA draft is tonight in Brooklyn. A full schedule of games in Major League Baseball yesterday. American League winners included the New York Yankees, Cleveland, and Texas. National League winners included the New York Mets, Milwaukee, and San Diego. In the WNBA, there were two games. New York beat Golden State 81-78, and Las Vegas blew out Connecticut 85-59. And talks on a new collective bargaining agreement in the NHL are continuing. One of the issues is a possible expansion of the regular season from 82 to 84 games. The current CBA expires on September 15th of 2026. That's a look at sports. Back to you, Steve.
All right, Brock, thank you for that. Greatly appreciate it. As always, coming up in the next hour, we're going to talk about gender-affirming care. The Midwest hub for gender-affirming care is now Michigan. How repugnant, right? We'll see what the Supreme Court ruling, if that'll change anything. Legislative bans in over 20 states. Michigan law permits gender-affirming care services, hormone therapy, puberty blockers for minors and adults. All because of the 2023 expansion of the Elliott Larson Civil Rights Act, which added protections for LGBTQ plus IAZZL, F. Or was it what the F? Which was it? I think it was what the F, plus, plus. I get confused. At any rate, we'll also have Ron Rademacher in the next hour. Yeah, we're going to talk about what's going on in Hancock, St. Ignace, Traverse City, Tipton, St. Clair, Mackinac, the Great Lakes region. And you are invited to write these things down in your travel planner. All right. We'll get to all of it. Coming up on the Steve Gruber Show. All right, welcome back to it as we kick off another hour here of the program. So glad you're along for the conversation. Three big things you need to know this hour from the Foxhole Freedom. Number one, Flint schools not enforcing the prevailing wage in contracts as required now by the new leftist administration in Lansing. Not new, ongoing leftist administration. How about that? Number two, Congressman Wahlberg, why did SEIU hire a child molester? Well, that's a fair question. I mean, why'd you hire a child molester? Anyway, and number three, happening right now, Pentagon is holding a briefing on the effectiveness of the U.S. strikes on Iran's nuclear sites. They're questioned by people like on CNN and elsewhere, even though there's no reason to believe that anything besides what Donald Trump said was true. They were obliterated. We dropped 12 30,000-pound bombs on the Fordo site. How do you think that works out when they drive through 90 feet of concrete, which 90 meters of concrete apparently is what they're willing to go through, or able to go through? All right, so I want to start with this. Speaking of the nuclear hit in Iran, because this is important, there were a lot of presidents between 1979 and Saturday night. A lot of presidents that did a lot of talking about Iran and what should be done. And then there was Donald Trump. Listen.
To counter Iran's efforts to develop nuclear weapons and missile technology.
Iran should not have a nuclear weapon. Period.
I have stated that Iran will never be allowed to obtain a nuclear weapon.
We will not allow Iran to acquire a nuclear weapon.
Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated.
Yeah. We will not allow. We will not allow. We cannot. They're gone. There's your update. Here's the positive side of all of this. Steve Witkoff yesterday said, and basically this is in the aftermath of the American strike on Iranian nuclear facilities. This is in the aftermath of all of that. The ceasefire, by the way, is holding right now between Israel and Iran. The ceasefire is holding. Israel's sitting tight, not doing anything at the moment, not there. Steve Witkoff is the envoy that Donald Trump sends everywhere. That CNN and the Washington Post, New York Times try to say is a rookie, is a novice, doesn't know what he's doing. Gee, he seems to be getting a lot done for a guy who doesn't know what he's doing. Huh, weird. Witkoff says the Abraham Accords about to expand in the Middle East. Listen to this.
One of the president's key objectives is that the Abraham Accords be expanded, that more countries come into it, and we are working on that on my team and in coordination with the Secretary of State and the entire State Department. And we think we're going to have some pretty big announcements on countries that are now coming into the Abraham Peace Accords. And we're hoping for normalization across an array of countries that maybe people would have never contemplated would come in. So we're excited for that prospect. That will also be a stabilizer in the Middle East.
Yeah. A stabilizer in the Middle East, to say the least. The Abraham Accords, something else Donald Trump was not given near enough credit for. Getting countries to sign a peace agreement. Now, Saudi Arabia is going to be in, I know that. But you're going to get other signatories. They're going to join the Abraham Accord. This is another step forward towards peace in the Middle East, delivered by the guy that the Democrats call a Nazi, a dictator, a tyrant, and so on and so forth. Boy, are they going to eat crow. It's what's for dinner, Democrats, crow. Yum, yum. Pass the salt. All right. Meanwhile, New York City is the whole world rejects socialists and communists from Argentina to Italy to Poland to, yes, the United States. New York City embraces an outright communist. An outright communist. And the current mayor of New York rips this guy for being a snake oil salesman. Listen to this.
He's a snake oil salesman. Mm-hmm. He will say and do anything to get elected. Think about this for a moment. He wants to raise 1%. He wants to raise tax on 1% of New Yorkers' high-income earners. As the mayor, you don't have the authority to do that. You know who has the authority to do that? An assemblyman, which he is. He wants to do free buses. He could have done it at assemblyman. He doesn't understand the power of government and how you must making sure you improve your economy, raise the standard of living. And this is what we've done in the city. And I'm looking forward to being on the campaign trail and showing New Yorkers we can't go backwards. And New Yorkers never surrender or quit. I'm never going to quit for the city that I love.
And there he is, the current mayor, who is staying in the race, Eric Adams. He's had his problems. Look, I'm not a big fan of a lot of things that he did, but he has come around to say, wait, we can't do this, we can't do it. Zohar Mandami, he wants to get rid of police. Get rid of the New York Police Department altogether. Replace them with social workers. That should be a good idea. He wants free daycare, free buses for everybody. He wants to tax the wealthiest people in New York. And by the way, there's been a big boom just today in the number of people looking to sell and get out of New York. Can you imagine? Yeah, they'll go to Florida. They'll go to Tennessee. They'll go anywhere but there, for God's sake. Oh, and when it comes to the state of race relations, because this is always a thing for the Democrats, I just had to play this sound for you. Latifah Simon is a congresswoman, apparently. I'd never heard of her. But she has a meltdown because white people have had the nerve to mention Martin Luther King Jr., a man for which we have a national holiday. She says, we're not allowed to talk about him. You keep his name out of your mouth. I can't make it up. Listen.
I want to be clear that 4 out of the 5 of you last year posted on your social media the words of Dr. King. And there are so few folks who actually have studied, who are clear on the theology of freedom of King. Very few of you have read and studied and have sat in Ebenezer Baptist Church. So I would ask you, you keep Dr. King's name out of your mouth. If you, like me and the many scholars who will be watching, studied King, you know that he and the mothers and the fathers of the civil rights movement and of the movement for emancipation not only would be struck by the conversations in this room, but would be shattered by the consequence of lies, of hatred, of abuse of this administration in the name of folks who worked to make this country more free. Children of Abraham, for real. I want to be clear for the young people that are listening today here in this audience, this conversation is not about an acronym.
Stop her.
It's just not.
Shut.
Steve, I'm leaving. That made me mad.
Yeah, from the Party of Tolerance, Anthony, there's Latifah Simon, Congresswoman representing California's 12th Congressional District. You ever heard anything more hateful in your life? You keep his name out of your mouth. What are you doing? Hey, buddy. You keep your name out of my mouth. Yeah.
See what you did to Steve Latifah?
See?
He's gone.
All right, back at it now as we get rolling into it with a friend of mine who's been all over this country. He's seen more pubs than an Irishman. He's seen more back roads than an Englishman. He's seen more. I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. It's Ron Rademacher, everybody. Yeah, Ron, welcome back. I don't know where I was going with that. It seemed fun for a second, though. You know.
Yeah, it seemed like a good idea at the time, Steve. I was with you.
Yeah,
you know.
more pubs than an Irishman. I like that actually. Throw that out.
Yeah, more pubs than an Irishman. Yeah, I was listening to a segment earlier, and they were talking about Trump was saying that something was obliterated, and that brought back memories. Because there was one time or two when I was described as obliterated, especially when I lived in Nama.
But Ron,
so
you just lied. You said it brought back memories. No, it brought back a blank. What I do? Who did I offend? Really?
Truer words were
I
never
love
spoken.
I love the bar in the Nama Inn. I do. It's one of my favorites.
Yeah, terrific.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's on your mind today, Ron? It's been hot.
It's been hot. It's going to stay hot for a while. We jumped from freezing rain and ice to 95 degrees. Love it. Gotta love being in Michigan. So I got a couple of trips for you to look forward to. And just so you know, in July, we're going to be posting over to Michigan News Source outlines of 3-day getaways. Because that's vacation time. Yeah, 3-day getaways all over the state. I'm updating that book, and so I'm going to be publishing outlines of some of those over there. So if people are looking for places to go and things to do that are off the beaten path, that's, Michigan News Source is going to have some of that.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's going to be cool. A couple of them are going to be in Upper Peninsula where we've got things going on. Hancock, Canal Rock, the Outdoor Music Festival is going on this coming weekend. And if you've not been there this time of year, it is spectacular. The weather is great.
Anthony.
You can get rides on the black flies.
Young Anthony in here. He's going up there for the first time and do a little road trip here in the near future. So it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, and if you get a chance to be there for that, and if they do their Parade of All Nations, which they do a couple of times a year, it is I don't even like parades, and it is a fantastic parade coming across the bridge. If you've not been to Houghton Hancock, you're missing out on a great. And listen, Anthony, when you go, make sure you go to the Seaman Mineral Museum in Hancock. In Houghton. You will thank me profusely for that.
No, for sure. Appreciate it.
We got some other stuff going on. Sault Ste. Marie, Engineers Day is coming up. So for everybody who's crazy about getting out to see the Lakers, the great big ships, June 27th is Engineers Day, and it features the hydroelectric plant. But you can walk across MacArthur Lock on that day and that day only. So you can get right up next to these gigantic 1,000-foot Lakers going through the locks. And they're going to have a lot of people talking about water safety. That's always a great event. And St. Ignace this weekend has their car show. It's the largest, one of the largest in the country, all makes and models. Over 800 show vehicles will be in the street in downtown St. Ignace. So that's going to be a good time.
Well, I wonder what it's like to drive a Model T over the bridge. Honestly. Little dicey
Depends
even
on
in a
the
big
wind,
heavy
Steve.
truck. What's that?
Yeah, depends on the wind.
Yeah.
If you don't want to do that, one of the big events in Michigan is happening this weekend, the Cherry Festival.
That's right.
In Traverse City, far from the northern compound. It's that's always a great time. Tipton, down a little bit further south at Hidden Lake Gardens, is having their annual Hosta sale because they do have a fantastic crop of hostas they grow there every year. But a big one that I wanted to talk about, because I don't want time to get away from me, is the Bay City Survival Challenge is this weekend. Now, you got to pay for this one, but Steve, I don't know if you've ever watched the TV show called Alone.
Oh, yeah.
Where people go out and get dropped off in the wilderness. And when the series first started, it was really good. The later ones, have turned into kind of like a starvation marathon, so they haven't been quite as good, in my opinion.
Right.
But if you've ever thought that you wanted to do it and weren't really sure what it would be like, you can go over to Bay City and you can challenge the Topeka Marsh, which is a gigantic wetland, and you can do a survival thing for the day. I'll read what you get. You get fire building instruction and safety, shelter building, packing for preparedness, that's always good, survival fishing techniques, Steve, a primitive archery shoot, and
What
more.
do you mean,
Then,
Steve? Survival fishing, Steve. What is it? Survival fishing, Steve. You bring Ivy,
Then you
Steve, so
get
you can
dropped
catch
off
your
at your-
fish. Catch your fish for you, Steve. Bring Ivy.
you want me to keep your name out of my mouth? Is that what you want now? Keep your name. Yeah, well, it was perfect. Sorry about that.
You keep your name, my name out of your mouth.
If you want to try that out, this is a good one, and you can't. It's only 24 hours and it's supervised. But for those who have never done it, of course, we grew up doing it. You know, on the lake, on the Looking Glass River. From the time I was 5 years old, we were back there camping out by ourselves. Our parents made us.
That's right.
So that's what's going on in Michigan this weekend.
My mother's encouraging words in the summer. Get out of my house. Oh. You know, it's nice outside. Get out of my house. But I want to watch cartoons. Get out. Okay,
Right,
Mom.
right.
I was just leaving.
Get out and stay out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Until the sun came down, and it's, you know.
And then you had to get back. Well, we had to go
Anyhow.
back and move the cows and slap the hogs, so, you know, because you had to do that. And then,
Yeah.
but dawn to dawn, out.
All right, there you go. And again, Bob the Turtle World Tour continues in St. Clair at the Art Fair, June 28 and 29. So you'll be there with Bob the Turtle.
That's right.
Don't miss it in St. Clair, folks. I appreciate it. Ron,
Helga says she will be there. So come on down and say hello.
she'll have her flair on. All right. Thank you, Ron. Good luck out there. And you keep my name out of your. Get out of here.
Yeah. Try to keep out of trouble.
MichiganBackroads.com. Keep that in mind. MichiganBackroads.com. If you want your festival or event highlighted, that's where you do it. MichiganBackroads.com with that guy right there, Ron Rademacher. I'll be right back. All right, so I was in northern Michigan this past weekend again, right? I was up at the northern compound, and I'm I'm going to make this prediction clear. Again, I've made it before, and I made it after I first saw the damage done by that massive ice storm, that historic once-in-a-century ice storm earlier this year. There is a massive wildfire on its way to northern Michigan, maybe more than one. But the amount of debris, deadfalls, broken trees, brush that is piled up in some areas is breathtaking. It can't possibly be cleaned up except by one thing: fire. Fire will clean the forests of northern Michigan. Probably not this year, could happen this year, probably next year or the year after. One lightning strike, two lightning strikes, a big storm comes through, multiple lightning strikes, multiple fire origins, and boom, you've got a wildfire like this state has not seen in more than a century. There's so many downed trees, so many trees that are snapped off, it's breathtaking. And when all of that is dried out, when all of that is tinder dry, we're going to see a massive fire in northern Michigan that it'll have the climate alarmists screaming global warming and climate change. No, Mother Nature, more accurately. We had fires in this state that burned from Lake Michigan to Lake Huron in the mid to late 1800s. Look it up, 1871, 1881, massive fires in northern Michigan because of what was left over from the logging days of northern Michigan. The same is on its way. I tell you now, the same is on its way. Big fires in northern Michigan. Just a matter of time and for the right conditions to present themselves. The deadfalls are many. It's fuel. Fuel for a forest fire. It's all there, laying and waiting for an ignition. Right now it's drying. It's in the drying phase, but it's coming. You've been warned. Keep it in mind. All right. See what we got coming up next here. We've got Senator Roger Houck from Michigan's 34th Senate District. We'll have that up next on The Steve Gruber Show. All right, back at it here on a beautiful Thursday. By the way, programming note tonight, 6 o'clock, Just the News, No Noise on Real America's Voice. I'll have a special report on the Chinese students arrested trying to bring fungus and ringworm, among other pathogens, into the United States. Special report tonight. Just the news, no noise, with John Solomon and myself reporting. You'll want to catch that on Real America's Voice TV. Now joining me, Senator Roger Houck. He represents Michigan's 34th Senate District. Senator, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thanks for having me again.
All right, so the 34th Senate District, give the folks a quick reminder.
Okay, it's Gratiot, Isabella, Macasta, Gladwin, Clare, Osceola. I have the full counties there. And then I have parts of Lake, Bay, Midland, Saginaw, and Clinton County. So
Man,
it's a big area. Nice
so
area.
at first it sounds like you're up north, and then it sounds like you're not. So are you up north or you're not?
Kinda.
Kinda.
I belong to the Northern Caucus, if that helps out anything.
Yeah, sort of. Yeah, Clinton
Hey,
County's
just
not
one
up
thing, I
north,
was
but yeah.
listening to you talk about the ice storm that happened up in northern Michigan, and you're 100% right. It's the biggest thing is usually when there's a fire up there, the trucks can get there, but I mean the roads and everything's blocked.
Right.
So we're
I mean,
looking at-
my understanding, and you can help me with this, Senator, my understanding is the county parks are still closed. The country club in Gaylord, for example, not even allowed to open because the insurance company says until you clean up all those broken trees and widow makers that are hanging up there, we won't even insure your golf course. I mean, that's and all the county parks and all the state parks closed because the trails are all dangerous, right?
Yeah, yes. It's I was up there about 3 weeks ago, and it's absolutely devastating what happened. So
Right.
yeah.
So the fact this is the most predictable natural disaster of my lifetime. There is going to be a fire. There's going to be a massive fire like we haven't seen since 1881 in this state when a fire burned from Lake Michigan to Lake Huron. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm
it's
just
not a
telling the
matter
folks.
of- yeah, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when, right?
That's right.
When is it going to happen? Yeah.
I would guess not this year. It's got to dry down for a full season, I think. I think next summer is the most likely. And as the DNR, just had somebody send me a note. The Jeffrey sent me a note saying, hey, do you think the DNR will do some preventative burns, to get ahead of it? No, was my answer. No.
Yeah. Well, you never know.
Yeah, I kind of do. And apparently by your reaction, you kind of know as well, Senator. Yeah. What's the DNR going to do? Not a damn thing. Just so we're clear on that.
Well, they need more money, right?
Yeah. Well, in fairness, right now, where I live in southern Michigan, I think there's one CO for 2 counties.
Yeah.
One CO for 2 counties. That's it. And, anyhow. All right, so let me ask you about this. The reason you came here today, right to work. Michigan is the first and only state that's ever gone back on right to work, right? We're the only state that's gone and reapplied a prevailing wage and other radical leftist nonsense. Hey, if we're really lucky, we can get somebody like Mamdani, the guy they just pushed through the Democratic primary in New York City, to run this state. Boy, why don't we just go right to the final conclusion of stupidity?
Let me tell you a few things. First of all, the prevailing wage, right?
Yeah.
They're dropping a bill. I think it's Senator Cherry is dropping a bill to exempt the schools that bid out their projects before we voted prevailing wage in, because if we don't, they're not going to have enough money to do the projects paying prevailing wage.
Right.
So what's that tell you about prevailing wage?
It
right?
costs you and I a crap load of money. That's what it tells me. It costs you and I a lot of money, right?
A lot of money. Not only that, all the solar and wind projects in Michigan, we have to pay prevailing wage for that also.
Oh, speaking of the DNR, hold on. In your neck of the woods, the northern part of your district, they want to use D9 Caterpillars to bulldoze state forests to put in solar panels. Boy, that sounds like it's good for the environment.
Sounds really
Who are
good.
these geniuses?
Well, when it comes to green energy, nothing, doesn't matter if an eagle gets caught in a windmill, right? Just as long as it's there.
The Cousinart of birds of prey, windmills. Yeah.
Yeah.
Chop, drop, Julian fries, whatever you want. You got it, Senator. Anyhow, so right to work, prevailing wage. So a prevailing wage costing us a pile of money. Did it improve anybody's life? No. Didn't improve anything.
The big argument is that prevailing wage jobs, it's better quality, it's safer. But I mean, they use the same building inspectors, right? They use the same process. I'm a builder. I build, I'm not going to build any safer than anyone else. And the building inspector is going to make sure that they inspect it. But Steve, the bill that I have, this is the biggest injustice of any of these packages. So if you get money from DHHS, say you're a group home or something, and your workers are there. And ever since I got here, we've been trying to increase the wage of these workers because they don't make that good of money and it's hard to get them and it's hard work. You now, without a vote, without talking to anybody, belong to a union and have to pay union dues. So what my bill would do would codify the Janus ruling that the Supreme Court did probably 2 or 3 years ago, which states that the federal government or a state, municipality, county, city cannot force anyone to join a union. But I mean, what you are being forced to belong to a union and you didn't even vote whether you wanted to belong to a union or not, which I have no problem with unions. If you're in a shop or wherever, grocery store, hotel, and you want to belong to a union, then belong to a union. But at least you have the opportunity to vote for it.
Right. You could say, no, that's not what I want. That's not what they're offering. That's not what they're offering at all. In fact, they're not offering. They're saying this is what you have to do. Look, people don't realize this. 1979, the United Auto Workers Union had more than 1.5 million members. Today it has less than 400,000, and less than half of those even work in the auto industry. These unions, they don't have the money they once had. They're trying to scramble to get money back any place they can. That's why they'll unionize anything, right?
Yeah.
They'll unionize a coffee shop.
If they can, And you know what? In all honesty, the way our state's worked out, unfortunately, we don't have right to work or whatever. But if the people in that coffee shop want to become a union and they vote to become a union, then they can become a union. But I mean, my gosh, you shouldn't be forced to become a union. I wonder how many of these people are surprised when they see a union due deducted from their paycheck.
Yeah, I'm looking. I want to make sure that I'm right about these numbers. I know that I'm right about just over 1.5 million in 1979. 580,000 retired in U.S., Canada, Puerto Rico. I mean, they can't support that. So the numbers I've got, I think it's just under 400,000 now. UAW member. It is. There it is. 400,000. My numbers are right. Good God, thankfully I do my homework. I thought for a second that maybe it was 600,000, but it's 400,000, less than half of which work in the auto industry. It's nuts. Anyhow, we need to get right to work back in the state. You're never going to do it until you get control of the Senate and a Republican governor again. Is that possible? Yes. We got 30 seconds for the last word.
Very possible. Very possible. We are working on it. We've been working on it since day one. I was in the majority in the House. I'm in the minority in the Senate. I do not like it. I think a lot of the business community thought that the Democrats wouldn't go as radical as California, but we've seen they've went more radical than California. Yeah. So we are going to get the governor and the Senate back.
Do you look forward to Governor Whitmer being president? Joking. Just joking. Just stop.
Are you going to jump on the bed? Why don't you come out and endorse her right now on your show?
I'm your guy. I'll be your Huckleberry. All right, Senator. Yeah, thank you so much. Greatly appreciate it.
Thank you, Steve. Yeah,
bye. Senator Roger Houck. Having a good time on a Thursday. I'll be right back. All right, back to it now. There was a briefing at the Pentagon here. And Pete Hegseth came out and he just threw fire. He called out the press corps for being the leftist bootlickers that they are. And he called them out to their faces because they're right there in the front row. And I want you to hear this. Happened just a short while ago within the last, 40 minutes. Go ahead, roll it.
Because you, and I mean specifically you, the press, specifically you, the press corps, because you cheer against Trump so hard, it's like in your DNA and in your blood to cheer against Trump, because you want him not to be successful so bad, you have to cheer against the efficacy of these strikes. You have to hope maybe they weren't effective. Maybe the way the Trump administration has represented them isn't true. So let's take half-truths, spun information, leaked information, and then spin it in every way we can to try to cause doubt and manipulate the public mind over whether or not our brave pilots were successful. How many stories have been written about how hard it is to, fly a plane for 36 hours? Has MSNBC done that story? Has Fox? Have we done the story how hard that is? Have we done it 2 or 3 times so that American people understand? How about how difficult it is to shoot a drone from an F-15 or 16 or F-22 or F-35? Or what it's like to man a Patriot battery? Or how hard it is to refuel midair? Giving the American people an understanding of how complex and sophisticated this mission really was. There are so many aspects of what our brave men and women did that because of the hatred of this press corps are undermined.
Stop.
Because
He's right. The press corps' obsession with undermining the United States military success is a national security liability. You see, these guys, there's a reason, by the way, according to Jennifer Griffin and other veterans who have covered the Pentagon for 10, 20, 30 years. This was the most secure operation they have ever seen as far as information. There were no leaks. You know why there were no leaks? They didn't tell Democrats, and they didn't tell the New York Times. They didn't tell anybody. The difficulty of this mission was matched with the difficulty of keeping it secret. Pete Hegseth is exactly right. It was executed flawlessly. These aren't partisan victories. These are American victories. This is a victory for you and I. It eliminated the threat, even if it's for a few months. Let's say worst case scenario, they've only eliminated the threat for 6 months or a year. That's a good thing, isn't it? Protecting America to make sure that Iran doesn't have nuclear weapons they can deliver to our doorstep. That's a good thing, right? Whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, that is a good thing. Taking dangerous weapons away from dangerous regimes is a good thing, right? We can agree on that, I would hope. But Here's one of the Democrat responses online to what you've been listening to. Defense Clown Secretary Pete Hegseth discussed the recent strikes in Iran, emphasizing the need to take decisive action. However, his own intelligence indicated, quote, the site was not an obligation, just a site that had been inactive for months. It's all garbage. These Trump haters will put their hatred of Trump above everything else. They will put their hatred of Donald Trump above everything else. But Pete Hegseth is right. These outlets are fundamentally anti-American. Why? I don't know. They're fundamentally, their hatred of Donald Trump because he has schooled them, showing that, look, he has done things they said he could not. He sealed the border. The economy has an inflation rate of 2.4%, lower than at any time in Joe Biden's administration. Unemployment at 4.2%, also historically low. He has Iran and Israel at a ceasefire. He's working hard to get Russia and Ukraine there. He has neutralized the nuclear threat from Iran. How are any of these bad news? Dear Democrat, Esquire Bob, even Esquire Bob, my buddy, Esquire Bob, he is no Trump fan. Doesn't like the man, but likes the results in many of these areas. I think that's saying he likes the results, does Esquire Bob. We've talked about it a lot recently. Yeah, it's sad that Pete Hegseth has to take the time to scold the failing national press. It doesn't matter, of course. They're not going to change their behavior. Their fundamental hatred of Donald Trump seems to grow and amplify every time Trump has a major success like this one. And wait, what are they going to say when Steve Witkoff is proven right and more countries sign on to the Abraham Accords, when Saudi Arabia joins, Lebanon joins, Syria joins, Jordan joins? What are they going to say then? That Donald Trump forgot some country? That it's not inclusive enough? The Ukraine should be included in the Abraham Accords? What is their criticism going to be exactly? Donald Trump has brought us closer to peace in the Middle East than we have been in my lifetime. The naysayers proven wrong time and again because they continue to criticize Donald Trump when he continues to defy gravity and win when they say he has no chance. The border, the economy, the Middle East, I don't care what your metric is. Donald Trump is kicking ass every step of the way. Print it. I'll be back. All right, I want you to hear just a little bit more of Pete Hegseth. I do. I want you to hear a little bit more. Go ahead and pick it right up there, Anthony. Go.
This mission really was. There are so many aspects of what our brave men and women did that, because of the hatred of this press corps, are undermined because people are trying to leak and spin that it wasn't successful. It's irresponsible. And folks in this room are privy to that information because of the proximity here in the Pentagon. It's an important responsibility. And time again, classified information is leaked or peddled for political purposes to try to make the president look bad. And what's really happening is you're undermining the success of incredible B-2 pilots and incredible F-35 pilots and incredible refuelers and incredible air defenders who accomplished their mission, set back a nuclear program in ways that other presidents would have dreamed. How about we celebrate that? How about we talk about how special America is, that only we have these capabilities? I think it's too much to ask, unfortunately, for the fake news. So we're used to that.
It is
but
too much
we also
to ask.
have an opportunity to stand at the
We'll
podium.
stop right there. Look, here's the deal. By the way, he's right about that. I flew in a KC-135 Stratotanker. It's a flying gas tank. It's a KC-135 that's been retrofitted to carry gasoline, or jet fuel, as it were. I flew out of Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio on a KC-135 sometime around about 1999, 2000. We flew to upstate New York. We refueled Warthogs, A-10s. And I got down. You've got this little space that you get down in, right? And you have to, it's like a wiffle ball cone, kind of like you got to kind of aim this thing. It's got this aerodynamic thing, and then you got to hook up. It's very difficult to do. I know I tried, and I did it on one, but man, it's not an easy task, and it's important when you're refueling B-2s and they're on a time-sensitive mission. I mean, you can't make a mistake there. Anyhow, hats off to the military. Hats off to the people that did this, and to hell with the New York Times and CNN and the others that tried to undermine this great success. To hell with them. We can do better. Fight the good fight. Keep the faith. God bless America, my friends. I'm Steve Gruber. It is the Steve Gruber Show. And remember, only you can save America.